Brad Behrens, Editor-in-Chief here at the IAB. As we look forward to the podcast upfronts next month, I'd like to invite you to watch this encore presentation of a conversation between Nina Munoz of IAB's Media Center and Lauren D. Williams of Pandora about what's in store for audio media. We hope you enjoy this presentation.
My name is Nina Munoz, and I am a director with IAB's Media Center. I'd like to welcome everyone today to IAB There, which is our daily live stream talk show where our goal is to connect the constituents within the digital advertising ecosystem. On today's show, we are so excited to speak to our special guest, Lauren Williams, the Senior Director of Marketing Strategy at SiriusXM and Pandora. To share just a little bit about Lauren, after more than a decade in media and marketing, Lauren Williams has devised a recipe for a successful career, comprised of equal parts determination and strong relationships. A veteran of big name advertising agencies who is now at SiriusXM and Pandora, Lauren says her secret sauce is embracing opportunities, being true to herself, and learning from mentors. And so with that, I'd love to welcome Lauren on screen today. Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nina. That was such a wonderful welcome. I love it.
Yeah, and I think it's a perfect segue into our discussion. And I want to jump right into it because we have so many great topics to get to today. You and I had the opportunity to connect last week, and I think that your career journey has been not only interesting, but inspirational. And so I'd love if you could share with us here today a little bit more about that journey, how you ended up in your role today and kind of landed within the audio ecosystem.
Absolutely. Well, thank you to the IAB there for having me on today. It's very surreal to have these kind of conversations over a decade into the career because I didn't think I would be here, to be perfectly honest. So I ended up going to graduate school after undergrad because I was like, I don't think going to work yet is what I want to do. And so I ended up going to get a master's degree in journalism with a specialization in public relations. And I ended up graduating during the recession of 2007. And so it was really difficult to find a job, going with a company that you felt like aligned with your values. And I remembered back to Starcom MediaVest Group coming to Indiana University in Bloomington, and they did a talk. And I was like, oh, I completely forgot about this organization, this company. And so I ended up applying for a job there. And I started working within Tapestry, which was the multicultural arm of Starcom in Chicago. And I started in January of 2008 and had no idea what I was getting myself into. And about day 3, I was like, this is not what I expected at all. I got to get out. And so I tried to get out for about 8.5 years. Clearly, I was not very successful in making the switch, but I would try and do all kinds of jobs like voiceover work or, being a traffic reporter. I was trying to get back into like the hardcore journalism and PR that I had actually studied in graduate school. But I would talk to my parents and my mom specifically, and she would always be like, Lauren, you're there for a very specific reason. And until you learn what you need to get and the skills that you need to obtain, you're going to be there. And I was like, thanks for that, but no thanks for that, because that was not what I wanted to hear. But she was absolutely right. And so I did a lot of agency stints. So I was at Tapestry, Starcom. I moved to New York in 2011 and was back on the multicultural side. So I was within MV42. And then I went to MEC, which is now Wavemaker, to work on Pepperidge Farm and Campbell's. And then I went back to a Publicis agency and went to Zenith and worked on Chase, which was absolutely so much fun. I think it was there that I really found my footing. And it was my first real introduction into Pandora from the publisher standpoint, because we were investing and working with Pandora in order to reach our key audiences for Chase. And then I moved over to, I told you I did a lot of agencies. I went over to Universal McCann, or UM for short, to lead strategy and planning for Office Depot, Office Max. And then I also picked up Build-A-Bear while I was there. But on Office Depot, Office Max, they did a lot of audio with Pandora. And so I really developed really strong relationships with my vendor partners at the time. And just, randomly, I really wasn't looking for an opportunity outside of I had it really well. I had an amazing boss and mentor who I'm still close to this day, which is just reminding me I need to call him back. But I had a recruiter reach out to me on LinkedIn about a job at Pandora. And it took me back to, college years. I was a vocal music performance major. And I quickly changed that major because I knew I could only either sing or teach, not a lot of options. And I knew I did not want to teach anyone's children. No offense to any parents out there. I think you all do a absolutely wonderful job, especially in the midst of the times that we're living in right now, having to juggle both. But my mother was a teacher, and she would drag my sister and I to do a lot of that type of work with her, like decorating rooms, painting, grading papers. And I was like, that is not the trajectory that I want to do. So I changed my major, but I always knew that I wanted to work in the music industry. So when the recruiter reached out, I was like, okay, let's at least see where this conversation goes. And so I went through the interview process and was like, okay, I think I want this job. I wasn't quite sure at first. And then I reached out to one of my vendor partners and was like, hey, I'm interviewing for this job. I would love it if you could write me a referral. And I think that has been the really main thread throughout my entire career, is really leveraging the relationships that I've been able to build in order to help me get to where I am trying to go, but also to make sure that I'm giving back as much as people are putting into me. And so I took the job. I was leading quick service restaurants, vertical marketing at the time. And then I quickly changed into and segued into doing the same thing for retail and financial services. And then in September of 2018, I believe, I was promoted to director of vertical marketing. So I was overseeing all verticals, and there's a lot of verticals. So, I mean, you think about the CPGs, the retail, FinServ, political, healthcare, travel and tourism, education. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And then while doing that, I was able to identify a gap on the team and was like, I think what is missing is the strategic audio part of it, because that really should be at the forefront, and then verticals should really trickle up to that. So I think of it as like an umbrella type of approach. And so I was going through MLT at the time, which was a career advancement program that Pandora invested. Not only it invested in my career trajectory, and I worked with my executive coach to really understand how to write a job description, write a career framework, and then I pitched it to my boss, and then I got promoted again it was like this time last year to the senior director of strategic audio and vertical marketing. So I was doing both. And then last August, in the middle of the pandemic, I was up late on a Thursday night, scrolling through social media, doing my rounds, Instagram, Facebook. And then I went over to LinkedIn and was served an ad from SiriusXM, which is so funny because it's like, I work here, but I'm getting targeted. And it was for the senior director of marketing strategy. And I was like, well, what is this? And then I was like, go to bed. It's midnight. You need to go to sleep, and it's not Friday. You have to work tomorrow. And so I woke up the next day, ended up having a socially distant coffee with a coworker. And she told me, you know what, you owe it to yourself to at least have the conversations. And so I came home and just started firing off emails. Like I was like, Lauren, you know who you would be reporting into, which is our chief marketing officer. And so I sent her an email. I sent an email to our SVP of brand marketing, and then was like, I should probably send an email to the recruiter as well. And so that really kickstarted the interview process. I had a lot of conversations with the teammates that I now work with, and I ended up getting the job in October. And then I started really in November, mid to late November. It really was November 30th, to be honest. And so I've been in the role for, I guess that's 2.5 months, almost 3 months now. And it's been a really amazing, eye-opening experience, because I've been with Pandora and now Pandora and SiriusXM for almost half of a decade, and I'm still learning so much every single day. Starting a new job in the middle of a pandemic is really difficult, because you don't have that face-to-face interaction. And I think I thought I was gonna be able to mitigate some of that just because I've been working here, but nope, starting a job, even if you work at the same company, is hard. But I have such an amazing team behind me and amazing coworkers and colleagues, and it's just been so rewarding. So, long answer to your question. I'm a storyteller at heart, and so that's my story. That's my journey.
That is so awesome. And thank you for sharing that. I was like taking little notes here and there because I mean, I really take away three things from your story. You know, as we think about the trajectory of our careers, sometimes it's as important to know what we do like to do as what we don't like to do, right? And then you continue to pivot from there. And it seems like you had a lot of that experience
Absolutely.
working at your agencies. The second I think is so cool is that you were able to like integrate what your initial passion was into what you're doing with advertising and marketing, like combining the music and the advertising piece. And the third is just to be so proactive about thinking about what you want and not necessarily always like waiting for the opportunity to present itself, but going out there and getting it yourself. So
Absolutely.
I love that.
I mean, closed mouths don't get fed. And I think as, you know, as women, especially women, you know, sometimes we think coming to work and just doing our job is enough. And you really need to be able to do your job well, but also do the relationship building well. Because when opportunities present themselves, you want people to immediately think of you. So you need to go the extra mile in order to really be able to be thought of in the future. And, you know, going back to what you said about passion, I was talking to another friend about, do you always have to work in your passion? And I'm like, no, it's an amazing opportunity to be able to work in your passion, but you really want to make sure that you're working within your purpose. I think purpose is so much more important than passion. You can be passionate about one thing one day and then it switches the next day. And I am so guilty of that. Like at one point I was like, I'm so about running. I'm so about running this marathon. And now I'm like, yeah, no, I look at people outside running like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this to yourself? And so I think, you know, passions may come and go, but your purpose is really ingrained in your values. So just making sure that you not only take the right steps in your career, but making sure that it aligns with values and purpose is so important. And then when you get the opportunity to working with your passion, that's also awesome.
So many good pearls of wisdom there. And I think you were mentioning how over the last year, right, our worlds have changed. You started a new role within the pandemic, but everything has changed. So in our industry, we saw media consumption changing across all channels, but particularly in audio. And so what I'd love to hear is in your time working at Pandora and now in your new role, thinking about audio, what are the consumption trends that you've witnessed? And then have those shifts in consumer behavior trickle down to cause advertisers to pivot in their audio strategy?
I think 2020 was a stunning reminder about the true power of audio. When you think about, because we've been in the industry for a long time, like when you think about like audio, you think about like old school radios and all of this stuff, but the technology that we have all come to know and love has really changed the game. And as of last summer, you know, average daily time spent with streaming audio hours increased 32% since the beginning of the year. That is a massive amount of growth. You know, more adults and people were just listening to their favorite audio content, whether that was music, talk, or even podcasts. and they were listening on streaming platforms versus in traditional ways. And that was really for the first time ever. You know, we took away, a lot of people were not driving as much. A lot of people were just consuming audio on smart speakers or on connected devices or their phones, or some people have it in their refrigerators. I mean, everybody's listening to it in these new and exciting ways. And I think the beauty about audio and what we found in research in comparison to other traditional media is that audio has this innate power to affect moods. It stimulates your brain. It triggers emotional reactions, right? Because if you think about your favorite song, right? I'm thinking about mine and how it just takes me back to certain moments. Like only audio really has the power to do that. So that is why the consumption has changed, right? And in line with that, you think about live events, right? I mean, everybody used to love going to concerts, and then that became complete distant memories because of the pandemic. And so people were looking for that sense of connection, to artists, to other fans, to create this whole community. And so I think brands recognized a lot about this, and they also recognized how audio is super flexible. There's all of these quick to production timelines. There's all of these intimate storytelling abilities that really took the spotlight. Um, and people and brands and marketers, and advertisers really recognize this and renewed a focus on having an audio brand identity, and so instead of it solely being visual. And so those consumption habits, I see them sticking, because once you form a habit, it's really hard to break them. And now it's like, you know, I just need my audio to accompany me throughout my hardest moments, whether that's, you know, I'm working in an Excel document and I need a steady beat drum, which I have found, just like musical aspects of hip hop music on Pandora. It is so great because it's like, for me, I get distracted by words and then I start singing and rapping along with it. But if it just has the music bed, it just powers my day, and it helps me get through those tough moments. Or if it's, you know, I live by myself, and that's a lot of isolating moments. And so how can audio be my constant companion? And I think a lot of brands have found that and have started to invest in audio specifically for that reason, because you can take it wherever you go. Versus visual media, it's there for a purpose, don't get me wrong, but audio is that constant companion, and brands have this unique ability to really penetrate people's lives in really impactful and moving ways.
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm a big podcast listener, and so it's true, like what an emotional connection you have, even in the dead of winter in New York. You know, it's snowing right now as we're recording this. I always try to get out for a walk, and I get so excited to just throw a podcast in and listen to my friends talk about whatever the topic may be. So those habits forming, I agree with you. I think that consumer behavior will shift.
Yeah, absolutely. Good for you for going out for walks. I'm like,
I try.
It's so difficult. Like, I want to go outside, and every time I go outside, I'm like, oh, this is nice. This is really, really nice.
Fresh air. Imagine that.
Right. But I'm like, it just takes a lot to go outside. So I'm just like, I got a Peloton that really solves for a lot of it. But I mean, think about even that. Like, that is music enhanced activity, going back to the whole power of it. I mean, it's just so powerful. And podcasts, I mean, don't even get me started on podcasts. Like, it is just so amazing. The art of storytelling that comes through with podcasting. And it really just immerses the listener like none other to really bring stories to life. And that's exactly what brands are trying to do. They're trying to communicate their differentiating factors to audiences. And so why not latch on to the equity that audio brings and really penetrate listeners' imaginations in that really impactful way? And so I think, you know, it's going to stick around forever, and it's going to be really powerful and continue to really progress as the years go by.
Yeah. And I think even for myself, like as I'm going out for these walks or throwing music in while I'm working out. I, as a consumer, have a ton of brand recognition and recall. I mean, I can literally remember I heard this ad from this host during this time. And so I know you mentioned that you've worked across so many different verticals in this space. And I think some of these, the benefits of audio advertising really come to life when we can talk about an example. And so in your time, is there any brand that you've seen do it really right? And like, what are the strategies for success?
Yeah, I'm going to use an example from last year. I mean, I think we were living in such a moment where there was constant cultural shifts and brands were left scrambling to try and figure out how to message, how to connect, how to resonate. And it was really difficult. But State Farm is a real best in class example that utilize sonic strategy, which is really, really important. How you're talking about, you recognize when you remembered hearing that brand or you remember that sonic ID. And as consumers, like, we pick up on those cues whether we realize it or not. And so State Farm really utilized the sonic logo as this ever-changing and growing asset. And so when the pandemic hit, they really fine-tuned that sonic ID in just 2 days. I mean, think about that. Like, audio, I mean, even as like right now, you can literally just get on your laptop and start recording. I remember the beginning of the pandemic when I was recording podcasts in my closet, like, because it's supposed to be really great for the sound against clothes. But that's the beauty of audio. It's like that quick to production timeline. And State Farm really took advantage of that because they really wanted to make sure that their sonic identity was aligned with the environment that we were living through. And so they ended up doing some studies on it and some grabbing some research from respondents, and 50% said that their new sonic logo gave them a positive association with the brand. And they saw a 14% increase in Veritonic's annual audio logo index. That's huge. And they did it in such a short timeline. And so I think if brands really recognize how important an audio holistic strategy is, not just like running ads on streaming platforms or creating multicultural assets, like the whole gamut. Like, how does your brand sound? That is so important and really powerful. And State Farm is a great example of a brand that really took that and leveraged it and utilized it to the best of their ability in order to really make an impactful moment with their consumers.
I love that. And I think something you mentioned before, that kind of sonic branding is only going to become more relevant in our lives as we're all leaning into voice more often. You mentioned like some people even have that functionality built into things like refrigerators. So that is something that as marketers are thinking about who they are as a brand, that sonic branding is an important piece of that.
Absolutely. I think about, I don't remember, and I might be dating myself or I might be showing that I'm young. I'm not quite sure. But do you remember that Full House episode when Joey and Uncle Jesse were coming up with jingles for like random advertisers? I mean, a sonic identity can be anything from the consistent familiarity of a voiceover. It could be a logo. It can be a jingle. And it really, like, this whole explosion of sonic identity takes me back to that moment as a child. But I mean, think about it. Like, I still remember those jingles that Uncle Jesse and Uncle Joey were putting together, which is so ridiculous, but further showcases the power of audio and how, it just has this really, really amazing ability to storytell over, decades to come if you utilize it right.
That example resonates with me. So to pivot slightly, I know throughout your career, you have advised marketers a lot on their audio strategy. But now in your current role, you're tasked with overseeing that marketing strategy for your own brands with Pandora and SiriusXM. So how are you thinking about molding the brand persona and voice for these two brands? And how does that that persona translate across the various marketing channels that are available to you?
Yeah, at the core of everything that we do at both SiriusXM and Pandora, at the core of that is our listeners. So, really understanding their needs and how our brands can best deliver on those specific